really great friends, Briony Liber. Since 2017, she has coached STEM professionals to show up confidently in the world by helping them identify their true value and articulate it in a way that positions them to be impactful in their careers, their communities, and the world at large. She works with her clients in a one-on-one and group coaching to get curious so that they can connect to their voice, communicate their story in a way that resonates deeply with their network, find the courage to show up and position themselves. Before starting her coaching practice, Briony was a partner and business unit manager in one of South Africa's leading mining and natural resources consultancies. She's currently the mentoring lead for WIMSA, that's Women in Mining South Africa. She holds qualifications in business coaching, multiple brain integration techniques coaching, a postgraduate diploma in business administration, and an MPhil environmental management. She regularly offers pro bono workshops to students and young professionals through the Geological Society of South Africa and for some of the student bodies at the University of Wits. And I'm going to leave that up to you then, Briony. Please go right ahead.
Thanks, Nolene, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's always a pleasure to come and speak to everybody, and it's wonderful to be able to do this online because I know that there are some people who are attending that would not normally be able to attend if we were just doing this in Johannesburg. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the idea, Nolene. You and I were chatting about how some of my work has evolved to working with very technically proficient experts in technical fields, and how so many of them seem to get caught up in the sense that promoting themselves and marketing and advocating for themselves is not humble, and that talking about their achievements is bragging, and that it's a really uncomfortable thing for them to do. And so a lot of the work that I do with my coaching clients is helping them get comfortable with articulating who they are and actually standing up and telling their story and building relationships. And when we were talking about that, Nolene said, God, you have to come and talk about that to GSSA. So here I am. And so with that, the question that I'm posing, and I'm going to share my screen, is the question that I ask all of my clients. How are you positioning yourself as an expert? And I ask that question because it's firmly my belief that whether you're an employee, whether you're the boss, whether you are running your own business, whether you're a student, you are firmly in the position of being the CEO of your own career, which means that you have to have a vision for the business, and you have to be able to position the business as one that can provide solutions to people. And if you are your own business and you manage yourself like a business, you're going to be far more intentional than you are if you have the mindset of being somebody that is waiting for opportunities. You're going to go out there and market yourself. You're going to see yourself as the marketing manager of your business, the sales manager of the business, the operations manager of your business. And that's a very different mindset to hoping that somebody will find you. And immediately after I ask this question, whether it's of students or of people who are mid-level in their career, and sometimes even of people who are executives, I immediately get the question, but what if I'm not an expert? What if I've got nothing to say? And so I want to debunk that myth in this talk, because everybody is an expert at what they're doing right now. And I believe that everybody is a brand. And whether your brand is intentionally created or whether your brand is something that people experience without you really realizing what you're putting out there, you're still a brand. And so when you're positioning yourself, you want to be intentional about how you show up in the world, how you speak to people, how you deliver on what you promise, how you advocate for what you do, how you share content, how you share your knowledge, and how you serve your network. And so that's the first thing that I want to say is whether you think about yourself as a brand or not, you're a brand. If you're intentional about your brand, you have the ability to control how people experience you, or at least influence how people experience you, because you can be very clear in how you show up and how you align the way that you show up with what you value. If you are not intentional about being your own brand, sometimes you create a lot of incoherence in how people experience you. And that can start to dilute how you position yourself and how you show up. So I want to ask, and I'm going to ask you to react to this. There's a reaction button at the bottom of your screens. I want you to react to this by letting me know how many of these statements do you find yourself saying, and how many of these statements are holding you back from showing up as a brand, an intentional brand, that is holding you back from positioning yourself intentionally as a person that people need to know. And because these are statements I hear from my clients all the time, and I put these statements because these are things that I've thought myself many times, almost all the time when I'm about to put something out. So if I talk about my accomplishments, oh God, that's embarrassing. I'm bragging about myself. That's not humble. I can't do that. I shouldn't have to tell people that I'm good at what I do or that I'm valuable or worth working with. They should already be able to see that on the basis of my good work. My work should speak for itself. I hear from students a lot. I have no accomplishments to talk about. I'm just a student. So how can I be an expert? How can I have something to talk about? People say, I want to play company politics. That's dirty. If I have to play the politics, then I'm getting involved in something that feels a bit underhanded. People should just recognize me for my work. I don't like networking. I don't like about myself. It's not humble. Or I don't know what to say, or I don't know where to start. So I saw a few reactions. I didn't see a huge amount. Why don't you just do a quick round? If any of these feel familiar to you, just do a quick round of reactions, because it gives me a sense of whether any of these are landing. Okay, so I'm seeing a few. Thank you. Thanks everybody that's reacting. So these are statements that, as I've said, I hear all the time. And when I start to dig into these statements, basically my clients are saying to me, I don't want to show up and be seen, and yet I feel like I'm being passed over and I'm not being seen. Okay? And it ends up being a very tricky catch-22. And for the young professionals in the room and the students in the room, I want to say right off the bat, you don't have to be an expert to start doing something, or to start speaking up, or to start being seen. You do have to start doing something in order to be an expert. And whether it's about positioning yourself as somebody that people will employ, you have some expertise where you're at. You have expertise in the theoretical learning that you've done, in some of the data that you've collected and analyzed, in some of the software that you've used, and you definitely have expertise in certain things that people of older generations don't have, like making videos and working with some apps that people just aren't familiar with, and some of the latest theory that you've been learning about at university that perhaps others haven't been keeping up with. And the point is that nobody expects you to be an expert at their level, but they expect you to be an expert at where you're at right now. And so holding yourself back and not speaking because you haven't got 10 or 20 years of experience immediately shuts you down from being able to show up for the expertise that you already have right now. And it shuts you down from being able to gain the expertise you need or the experience you need in order to become an expert if people can't see you. Second thing I want to say is, when you're a student, nobody is coming hunting you down and knocking on your door. You have to do the hunting down and knocking on doors, and in fact, kicking down doors. And one of the best ways to do that is to start sharing your knowledge. sharing your thoughts, engaging in conversations, showing up, and at the moment, because we're in lockdown, mostly, using LinkedIn as a platform to show up. And I don't want to make this all about LinkedIn today, but I do think it's a very relevant platform that a lot of people aren't leveraging to its full potential. And while we continue to be socially distancing for however long that's going to be, LinkedIn is a great platform where you can position yourself as a keynote speaker, okay? And you can position yourself for the expertise that you've got right now. So that leads to this slide. And what I want to say here is that everything that I'm talking about right now is part of a course that I've developed about how to leverage LinkedIn. And the premise that I start with is that LinkedIn is a proxy for a real life conference, okay? It's a 24/7, 365 online conference that's being attended by, at this point in time, about 850 million people around the world, across every single geographic region, across every single industry and every single profession. And it's got everybody from decision makers through to students available on it. And when you start to think about it as a conference and you start to think about what you do as a conference, there are 3 specific areas where I believe everybody can make use of LinkedIn and help position themselves as experts. If you're going to a real life conference, you've got to pay money. You've got to dedicate a couple of days of time to it. You generally go as an attendee rather than as a speaker. And so as an attendee, you really don't have a huge amount of leverage in being able to say, look at me, this is the expertise I've got, because you're not on the stage speaking. But on LinkedIn, you have the opportunity to be a keynote speaker every single day of your life, and to use LinkedIn as your stage, as your platform to position yourself for what you want to be known for. And the 3 components of LinkedIn that I think immediately make it easier to engage with is, if you think about a conference, at a conference, there are exhibition stands for the various different companies that want to showcase what they do. On LinkedIn, you have an exhibition stand, your own personal exhibition stand. And if you run your own business, you have an exhibition stand for your business as well. That's your profile, okay? So purely by having a profile on LinkedIn, you're already present at the conference. How you use your profile makes the difference between positioning yourself as somebody that people want to come over and speak to and check out what's happening at your stand and engage with further, or pass over completely, like the stand at a conference where there are some that are well decorated, they've got lots of people hanging around them, they've got people there answering questions, they've got pamphlets and banners and videos and all sorts of collateral that makes them interesting to visit. And then you've got the stands at the conference where nobody's even manning the stand, and there's maybe one tatty banner and a few leftover pens, and you kind of look at it and go, nah, I'm going to walk past that. The same is with your profile on LinkedIn. So if you take a little bit of time to make your profile findable with keywords and interesting with content, you're more likely to have people come to visit your stand. The second part of the conference is engaging with people in between presentations, in between walking around the exhibitions, before the conference and after the conference. And often in that engagement, you're talking about what other people have said or what your thoughts are, you're adding a little bit of value to it, you're sharing business cards, you're building your network. The exact same thing is happening on LinkedIn in the content feed. So that's like a conversation that's taking place 24 hours a day in between presentations. And again, I see a lot of people on LinkedIn and liking posts, but not commenting on posts. When you like a post, it's like sitting at the back of the conference going, yeah, that was a good idea. I like what he said there, but to yourself. When you comment on a post, it's like putting up your hand in the conference and going, I'd like to ask a question or make an observation. Suddenly everybody turns around and goes, oh, that was interesting, that was valuable. And if you share the post and add your own thoughts to it, that's like taking the content that you've learned in the keynote speech and talking about it with the people around you. When you're tagging the speaker or the person who posted the content, it's like pulling them into a conversation when they're walking past you at the conference. It's like saying to them, that was really great, I liked what you had to say there. And again, you're not talking about yourself at all. All you're doing is talking about somebody else's content, but showing up as somebody who's adding value. The third place where you can show up on LinkedIn is as a keynote speaker. This is something you can't do easily at a real life conference because there are only so many speakers who get to speak at conferences. But on LinkedIn, every time you post something, every time you share an article or write an article, every time you share a video or you share any of your own content, you're standing up as a keynote speaker. You're saying, look at me for my knowledge, for my content, for my expertise, without having to actually say to anybody, hey, look at me. Your content starts to speak for itself. And so again, if you're not sharing content and sharing what you're learning, sharing what you're doing, nobody's going to know about it. And it's the equivalent of going back to that story in your head of, well, if I just do really good work and I keep working, somebody will notice me. But the point is, we live in a very noisy world and there are a lot of people doing really good work. And you can do excellent work, but if you don't advocate and tell people about that work and interpret that work into something that they can understand as being valuable to them, they're going to go to the next person who is. So I just want to stop there for a moment and ask if you're still with me, whether you're hearing me clearly and whether you're on board with what I'm saying in terms of LinkedIn being a conference. If you can just give me some reactions, that'll give me a sense that, okay, great. Thanks, Marius. Okay, excellent. So, next point I want to make is we all know that going to a conference can be overwhelming. And often you walk in there, there's hundreds of people, thousands of people even. They're all milling around. You can't really see over the top of their heads. You haven't a clue who most of them are. And all of a sudden, walk into a conference going, I'm going to get a lot of value out of this conference. And then there's a sense of overwhelm going, oh, I actually don't know who to speak to at this conference. I don't know how to make an impact at this conference. I don't even know what to talk about. Suddenly my head's gone blank. Anybody resonates with that? Let me know, because that's what happens to me when I go to a conference. And unless I'm a speaker at the conference, I often feel like I have nothing that I can add value to. But the moment you start to segment the conference, and on LinkedIn, segment your audience, suddenly you can start to be clear on who you are and what you're about and who you're speaking to and why you're there. Suddenly it becomes a lot easier to position yourself for the things that you want to be known for. Okay, so instead of looking at LinkedIn as 850 million people around the world, look at it as, why am I here? What do I want to get out of the time that I spend on LinkedIn? Who are the people that I want to speak to? So who are the people that I want to know me for something? And what are the things that I want to be known for? And every single one of us is going to have different objectives being on LinkedIn. Every single one of us is going to have different people that we want to be talking to. And every single one of us is going to have different topics that we want to be known for. And so yesterday I was running a group of mentees in the geosciences field, and we were talking about exactly this. We were talking about 9 students They're all studying something related to geosciences, and they're all going, but we're students. How do we distinguish ourselves? And then we started to talk about, okay, so what are the areas that you're specializing in? What are the particular areas that you want to gain experience in? Who are the people that you need to be having conversations with in order to position yourself for these things? And in the space of 10 minutes, 9 students had suddenly defined themselves as 9 completely different people, differentiated for 9 completely different things. There were overlaps, but there were also areas where they suddenly were going, oh, okay, I can talk about that. That's what distinguishes me from the next student. And suddenly there was a change in approach, because instead of going, LinkedIn's overwhelming and I don't know what to talk about, we'd started focusing in and segmenting, who do you want to talk to? And when you imagine yourself talking to them, what do they need to know about you? Okay? So the first thing in positioning yourself, whether it's at a real life conference, whether it's in a networking event, whether it's on LinkedIn, is going there intentionally with a goal. Having a clear sense of what outcome you want from the time that you've invested there. In my case on LinkedIn, my goal is always to position myself as an expert in career and business coaching to STEM professionals, largely in the mining industry, but also in other technical professions. And so those are the people that I talk to. And I'm looking for them ultimately to become clients of mine or to become people who are going to refer me. So I need to show up as being credible and articulate and having experience and being somebody that people can resonate with. That's my goal. The student's goal might be that they want to get a job. Who they show up to and how they engage is going to be very different to how I engage. But there's still something to position yourself for, and there's still a very clear goal. And I find a lot of young professionals on LinkedIn talking to their peers about the frustrations that they've got or the struggles that they're having finding jobs. And that their goal appears to be to complain and come across as being frustrated around the job issue. And that's a big issue. But it doesn't create a perception of solving things, of positioning themselves for what they're good at. And it's a narrative that I think often puts a lot of employers off. And so the discussion we had yesterday was stop looking at your peers as your audience and start looking at your future employer as your audience. Speak to what your future employer is going to find valuable and is going to see within you as being somebody that is going to easily fit into their work environment and start being productive as fast as possible. Nolene, I can see that, are you wanting to ask a question or something? Your frame looks like there's some activity going on.
Sorry, no, all good.
No, okay, all right, okay, perfect. So always on LinkedIn, have a clear goal. Have a clear goal for the next 2 or 3 years, and then work your strategy of showing up in relation to that goal. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point and ask for a few comments around what the various goals are in this room. So James, I'm going to pick on you because you're very active on LinkedIn. You position yourself really well on LinkedIn. You're constantly sharing content. So I want to ask you, what is your goal in how you share content and the content that you share? What are you hoping to achieve through that?
Brian, it's a very good question. I think the answer to it is quite a singular answer. In the world that I live in, which is in the world of a junior explorer, there are thousands of us around the world. And one's got to try and find a way of differentiating yourself from the thousands of other people like you. And seeing that we prefer to spend our money in the ground, we don't have many public relations advisors and things such as that. So what can you do? And it's very much what you've said so far. is you create a good LinkedIn profile, you make comments on other people's LinkedIn posts, you share information, all with a view to kind of position yourself and your company, because in the world of the junior, they are synonymous with each other. And seeing I'm the only employee of Botswana Diamonds, I am synonymous with the company as a subject matter expert in the field in which you are doing. And so when someone looks for a comment on diamonds or diamond exploration or things like that, hopefully they would come to me for a comment like that. Equally, and actually more importantly as well, is that if an investor is looking to make an investment in diamond exploration and they do some Google, they would look at LinkedIn, they would look at Twitter, because I think that's also important for a public company. They would hopefully find me, and hopefully they'll get into a conversation with me. And this has happened, by the way, quite a few times. And I can persuade them to make an investment. But it's done with that single goal in mind that, you're like a tall poppy amongst others in your particular very, very niche discipline. But you've got to, as you said, you've got to keep it active all the time. And I would like to add that maybe when you're a bit older, like I am now,
nonsense, old nonsense.
You've got to try and present a paper or a presentation or something every year or so. Stephen Cowd and I are presenting something, hopefully, at the SAIMM conference on decision making under uncertainty, which will hopefully show that it's not just a hit and miss thing in exploration, but there's a lot of science and judgment actually around it too as well. And that paper was done to further underscore and illustrate that point.
Fantastic, thank you. And if there's anybody here who's not following or connected with James on LinkedIn, you really should be, because the content he shares is fantastic. It's entertaining, it resonates, it's personable. And James, I really do believe that you've created a great positioning of yourself and your company. Throw him under the bus. Oh, that's me. Sorry, you shouldn't have read that.
Okay, I think you now need to clarify that comment. Otherwise, James thinks it's about him.
I do.
It says here, Michael Cronwright often posts content or writes articles. Throw him under the bus. Right, okay, Michael, you're under the bus, care of Nolene's comment to me, which I clearly should not have read out loud.
Thanks,
Michael,
Kevin.
where are you?
Put my video on. Wasn't planning on talking.
Well, you're under the bus now.
Yeah, properly. Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
So, Nolene had said to me that you often post content and write articles. And so the question that I'd asked James was, what's your objective when you're doing that? What's the goal? What are you hoping to achieve? And so the same question to you. In sharing that content, what are you hoping to achieve on LinkedIn?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's similar to James. The difference being that I'm a consultant, so you do need to try and differentiate and be a bit of a thought leader and not necessarily regurgitate what's out there.
Yeah.
And really just to put out some views and generate a bit of interest in my interests in the industry, and obviously raise your profile a bit.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, what I've found over the last 4 years, so I changed careers 4 years ago. I moved out of the environmental risk management field, having consulted for 20 years, into starting my own coaching company. And it was then when I really realized the power of LinkedIn in repositioning myself. And consistently for 4 years, I've talked about coaching, about CV writing, about LinkedIn profiles, around managing your career as a business, and around showing up and being able to tell your story. And through that consistency, I'm now being sought out for those topics. I'm now being sought out for exactly what I've tried to position myself for. And it's taken a couple of years of doing that. And I worked out last year under COVID that I had more work from pure coaching than I'd had in any previous year. My entire income came from coaching, and it was a sustainable income, and 70% of that work came through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so the point is, it's an incredibly powerful place to be able to position yourself for business to business, business to consumer, and it's not just about getting a job.
Yeah, it is, and it does take, it's not an instant gratification or instant, it does take a bit of time, and you do need to be careful. I mean, sometimes you do say things where you feel a bit silly, but it's also about experimentation to some extent and learning how to perform optimally.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for showing up and sharing what you've been doing. And so I think what I want to say here is that often one of the comments I get is, but showing up takes time, networking takes time, marketing myself takes time. Okay, sure, it does take time, but you're going to spend that time at a conference anyway, of 3 or 4 days, or at networking events anyway. And so to break that down into 15, 20 minutes of time every 2 or 3 days on LinkedIn is actually not a huge ask. And most people I speak to are on LinkedIn anyway, most days, but scrolling through the feed, achieving nothing. It's the equivalent of hiding behind a pot plant or hiding in the bathrooms at a conference. You're there, but nobody knows that you're there. And a lot of people say to me, but I don't have time to write content, or I don't know what to write about. So the easiest place to start is actually to leverage everybody else's content, leverage everybody else's conversations, and just jump in and add a comment to the conversation. Often I see people sharing other people's content, but with no comment added to it, no introduction around why this is valuable, why should anybody else read it, why I've shared it, and not even tagging the person who wrote that post. And so if we go back to the example of this being a proxy for a real life conference, if you are just sharing somebody's content without adding any value to it, you're basically walking past a person and pushing them in front of the speaker, okay? You're not positioning yourself for anything. You're just pushing somebody to see it in front of a speaker. That's a bit irritating. Most people are going to go, why on earth did you do that? And you haven't told me why I should speak to this person, so now I feel really awkward. So the quickest way to make value of sharing other people's content is to write 1 or 2 introductory sentences saying, this is tag whoever's content it is. Immediately, you're now grabbing the person and going, I liked your content and I think it's good enough to share with somebody. And then saying why. This is what I took out of this content. These are the 3 things that I thought were valuable, or this is what I want to add to it based on my experience, or what do you think? And suddenly you are giving somebody else an opportunity to shine, adding a little bit of value, which shows you know something about that topic. And if you're asking a question as well, starting a conversation that hopefully somebody will jump in and engage on. And that's very different in terms of making use of your time on LinkedIn than just liking a post or sharing a post without any content. And to me, that is the easiest way to start positioning yourself as knowing something about the topics you want to be known for without actually even having to write any content yourself. And there is no shortage of content to be sharing. So I want to go back to my slides. Because what I'd said, and I'm just going to go back here, there's 3 things that I think you need to be doing, whether it's in LinkedIn or any other engagement. Being clear on your goal, being clear on what you want to be known for, and being clear on who you want to know you for those topics. And once you're clear on your goal, let's move on to what do you want to be known for, okay? If you're on LinkedIn or if you're at an event and you talk about absolutely every single topic under the sun, nobody's going to be able to get a sense of what you actually are about. You start diluting yourself very quickly as somebody who comments on absolutely everything, but has no real theme, okay? And so my guidance to everybody that I work with is pick 5 topics that you want to be known for and focus on those. Only talk about those, only comment on those, only engage with people who you know are experts in those particular topics. So for instance, my 5 topics run along the lines of women in mining, career and business coaching, being able to leverage LinkedIn to position yourself as a network, as a expert, building the brand of you as your own business, and I can't remember what the 5th one is. So it may be CV writing. It's one of the things that I do as well. And the common theme in all of those is around actually being able to show up and talk about your expertise and position yourself in your career, in your business, and in front of your network so that you can be known for your expertise, so that you're being very intentional and purposeful in the way that you show up. So there's a common theme around that. And I think for every single person in this room, you could quite easily come up with 5 topics that overlap with each other and have a common theme. And those could be around what industry you work in, what phase of mining you work in, which particular resources you focus on, what you're actually wanting to achieve. So in your case, James, position yourself as the expert in diamond exploration and attract investment. So be talking about topics related to that. And all of those overlap to create a sense of, if I'm looking for somebody who is an expert in diamond exploration, I see James talk about it all the time, he's the person I'm going to go to. If James was talking about everything, might not be quite so clear on what his topics are that I could go to him for. But because he's very consistent in what he shares, I know that I could go to him for anything diamond and exploration related. And if actually I was starting a junior mining company, which I'm not, and I wanted to understand the process of attracting investors, I might even go to James about that, because I know that that's what he's focused on. And so suddenly he's somebody that I could get some advice from on those topics. Okay. So when you start to think about 5 things that you want to focus on, and you exclusively stick to 5 things or less, but I would say 5 because they're all going to overlap and they all kind of add nuance and depth to what you're talking about. And you consistently do that over time, and you consistently comment on the posts of people who are focused on those same 5 things, or 1 or 2 of those 5 things. It very quickly starts to build a brand around that particular content, and it very quickly starts to position you as a person that people are going to come to for those things. The third thing then is knowing who you're actually talking to. And so it goes back to my comment earlier of, when we're on social media, we generally think we're talking to one person and we forget that everybody else can hear and see what we're talking about. And so often, and I've had many experiences where I've posted something thinking of my friend and sharing content because I'm thinking of my friend. And then, to my surprise, having that commented on by all sorts of people that actually weren't in mind, and suddenly I feel a little bit embarrassed about what I've posted. And so I think when you are positioning yourself, you really need to have an image or an avatar in mind of who is the person that I'm talking to when I'm posting this, but also who are the other people that might be seeing this and might be perceiving me in a particular way when I post this content. Okay, so it goes back to the comment of, if I'm imagining myself talking to my student peers and we're all feeling very frustrated about sending out job application after job application and getting nowhere, and we're complaining about that, sure, my peers are going to engage with me on that content and we're all going to share our frustration, but we're sharing that frustration in a very visible platform where potential employers are seeing that and going, I wish you would show up as somebody who is sharing their expertise rather than complaining about how frustrated they are. And there's an example of a couple people that I've followed for a while, all students, who are doing a phenomenal job about showing up for their expertise. They share videos that they made. They share articles that they've written. They comment on things with good, substantial comments. They ask questions. They connect with people that potentially could be a future employer, and they add value all the time. And what they're doing in the process is showing initiative to stand up and share their skills, and through consistently showing up and being active and taking a constructive, productive tone, all three of them have been snapped up into the market for positions. And then I look at their peers who spend a lot of time complaining and not taking the initiative to create constructive content, and they're staying stuck where they are. So my guidance here is be clear on the topics that you want to be known for, who you want to be talking to about those topics, and ultimately be guided by your goal. If your goal is to get snapped up into employment, show up as somebody who is a problem solver, who is a self-leader, who is curious, who is engaged, not as somebody who is complaining about how unfair life is. And life is unfair. But really show up as somebody who's looking for creative ways to solve your own problems. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say there. And I think what I want to close out with is that if you can be clear on what you want to get out of your next 2 or 3 years of engaging with people and sharing your content, if you can be clear on who you're speaking to and what you want them to know you for, then you have the ability to take the stage on LinkedIn and share your knowledge and elevate yourself. And there was somebody mentioned it just now. It's about standing out among the crowd, okay? Everybody in the crowd at the conference is at the same height. They all look exactly the same. Nobody differentiates themselves when they're all just standing there. But when somebody sticks up their hand and says, this is what I want to talk about, immediately you go, oh, okay, now somebody has stood out from the crowd. Let me go and see what they're about. And if you can do that with intention, you're going to start to position yourself for the things that you want to be known for. Nolene, it's 1:45. I'm pretty sure I'm running out of time at this point. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Well, actually, before I stop sharing, I'm going to say that if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, scan my QR code, or just look me up on LinkedIn. I would love to chat about this topic more. And as I said right at the very beginning, I've developed a course on this that actually elaborates a hell of a lot more than what I'm able to say today. But if there are some questions and maybe kind of talking about, well, what sort of content can I share? I'd love to talk about that at this point and maybe just field some questions.
Thanks, Briony. I just realized as you were busy talking that this is an excellent topic for Indaba Week, where we would all generally be down in Cape Town. So thank you for filling in there. And if we have any questions, please jump right in. If you're a bit shy, you can type them into the chat and Briony can read them. But please, let's hear what you have to say. Anyone?
Hi everyone, can I please jump in again?
Yes, please, Sikelela.
So my question to you, Briony, is that it's one thing to connect with people, but then it's another to get them to look at your profile and stuff, even though you have worked on it extensively. So I wanted to ask, how does one bridge the gap between that? And also second question is, how important is it to write a message when you are connecting with someone or sending them an invite on LinkedIn?
So these are fantastic questions, and I'm going to deal with the second one first. I think it is critical to write a message when you're wanting to connect with somebody. If you imagine being the person that you're wanting to connect with, and that person gets 20 or 30 connection requests every single day, and nobody adds notes to them to say, this is why I want to connect with you, that person, unless they know who you are or they know somebody who knows you, which they'll be able to see by whether you're a second level or a third level connection, they're probably busy and probably aren't going to take the time to immediately connect with somebody that they don't know. What your connection note does is give you an opportunity to say, this is why I want to connect with you. I attended one of your webinars. I really enjoyed what you had to say, and I'd love to connect with you and follow up with a question. Or I've been reading the posts that you've been writing over the last couple of months, and I really like the content that you're sharing, and I just wanted to say thanks for sharing your content. Could we connect? That immediately starts to create a relationship. It starts to give people a sense of why you want to connect with them. And it also just breaks the ice. And it's the same as, again, think about this in the context of being at a networking event or at a conference. If you connect with somebody without saying anything in your connection request, it's like walking up to them at a conference, sticking your business card in their face and doing nothing, okay? The alternative is walking up to somebody and saying, hi, I really liked what you had to say there. I wanted to ask a follow-up question. Would you mind having a conversation with me? And then going, of course, I'd love to have a conversation because you've actually shown some interest in who I am and what I do. And then you can exchange business cards, which is the equivalent of the connection. So I hope that answers your second question. The first question was, I've connected with them. How do I get them to actually look at me? So my sense there is serve, 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 serve before you try and sell. And what I mean by that is if you connect with somebody, in fact, before you connect with somebody, follow them on LinkedIn for a while. Follow what they post about. Add a comment to what they post. Add value to what they post. Share what they've posted and tag them so that they know that you've shared their content. That's serving them by adding kind of engagement to what they're posting about. At some point, if you share and add value to what they're talking about, they're going to be curious about who you are and they're going to come and look at your profile, okay? If you've been commenting and sharing and adding value to their conversation for a while, and then you go and connect with them with a note, that person's probably going to come and look at your profile immediately because they've seen you commenting on their stuff and engaging in a conversation regularly enough. They've seen a note from you saying, this is why I want to connect with you. And more than likely will be curious about going, okay, seen this person showing up a few times, starting to get a sense of what they're interested in, starting to get a sense that they engage in the conversation, they're not just stalkers, and I want to see who this person is. So I hope that helps you, Sikulele. That would be my advice, and that's the approach that I take. It's generally add, give, and then ask to connect. Yeah, so Peter said here, I think the message is be a solution to a challenge that may or may not have been recognized by the employer. Absolutely. the least a young professional can provide is their time with some cheer. That's already more than most contribute. Absolutely, 100% agree. I think that's a great comment. Xanthi, you've come onto your video, so we'd love to hear you. It's nice to see you. How are you doing?
Good. It's good to see you too. It's very good to see you again.
Yes.
In these strange times. I actually don't have a question because you've given me so much to think about, but I just wanted to say thanks. And it's been a very good presentation. And you're just to add to your description of the young people who got jobs, who posted links. I mean, that would certainly, I think that would be great. When you said that, I thought, who are these people?
I'll share their links with you. They're fabulous.
So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So actually our talk next week is by Benedict Steiner from the Canborn School of Mines, and he's going to be talking about how we can prepare geology students for a career in the mining industry. So I think that's a really good addition to what you guys are just talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Nolene. I think one of the missing links for a lot of students is how to make themselves employable. And I think at university, you learn the theory and you get a little bit of hands-on practice, but you don't actually get the practical skills around how to make yourself employable, how to hit the ground running as fast as possible. And in these times, companies don't have a lot of time for hand-holding. They're looking for the person who's going to be the easiest to fit into their business and get productive as fast as possible. And so, and just going back to the point of students saying, I've got no expertise to share. Well, I dispute that, because I think a lot of students who are involved in their student groups have things to share around what they're doing there. They've got things to share about having been on a study tour, having done some field work, having published their masters. What's the topic? What was the research? Where did you do it? How did that add impact? Talking about having attended particular events, what they got out of the event, what can they share as learnings for people who didn't manage to attend the event. What books are they reading? What are they observing in the industry? And always looking for a way to share lessons and learning and themes, and show up as somebody who's being curious and engaged in the broader profession and industry and looking to make connections. And that's not something we learn at university, but it's definitely something that differentiates students from each other.
Do we have any more questions for Briony?
I just want to add James's comment here. He wants to add that a key trait he looks for is curiosity, and this can be quickly established or not on the kind of LinkedIn discussions you refer to. And I absolutely 100%. If you are engaging with people and asking questions and wanting more information or sharing your observations, you're immediately showing up as curious. And that, I think, is probably the number one thing that most employers are looking for at this point, is how quick are you to learn and get out of the mindset of tell me what to do versus let me figure it out for myself.
There's a comment from Tony.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, I appreciate your comments. I really hope this has been thought-provoking for everybody. I think I fall into the trap that everybody falls into. I know this, therefore everybody must know this. But I always say to my clients, just because you know it doesn't mean everybody knows it. You have to tell them, you have to share your knowledge. And so I'm always surprised when somebody said, oh, wow, that added value. Because I'm like, I do this every day. Surely people know this. But it's a great reminder to me that not everybody knows this, and this is why I do what I do. So thanks, Tony. I appreciate you saying that it was thought-provoking and insightful, and it's a reminder to me that And a reminder, hopefully, to everybody is that just because we know what we know in our individual professions doesn't mean that people automatically see it and know it and appreciate it of you. So you have to show up, you have to position yourself, you have to share your knowledge. And the easiest way to do that is just to start engaging in conversations. And with that, I hope, Nolene, you don't mind. What I would like to do is send you a link to my LinkedIn course and offer a special on that to your members, if you would be keen on that. Because I think there's a lot of content there that elaborates on what I've talked about here that might be valuable for some of your members.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks everyone for attending. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the platform to share something that I'm quite passionate about. And yeah, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect. And if you've got any questions, always happy to answer questions if you send me a direct message on LinkedIn. So don't be shy, show up.
Briony, thank you so much. Everybody else, thank you for joining us today. Enjoy your Friday afternoon and have a lovely weekend. And we'll see you all next week. Okay, everybody, thanks.